Hey there and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug video. And it seems we're still a fair way off from getting any fresh content in the form of upcoming specials or Season 6, at least as far as I'm aware. No release date yet, just a general vague, later this year maybe. So in the meantime, we have to make our own fun. And what is better than overanalyzing past seasons and characters again and again and again? And so yeah, today I want to do just that, taking a look at the characters of Master Fu and the Order of the Guardians, and to pose the question to you. Do you think they were heavily wasted characters? I've seen the sentiment posted around a little bit when people bring up the character, and so I want to have a chat about that today. I think the character of Master Fu, he started off really well. In Season 1, he's largely an enigma of a character. You don't really see him all that much. You see him in the background of a couple of episodes. The audience first properly meets him during the course of Princess Fragrance, where he's the guru that Marinette has to take Tiki to when she falls sick. And whilst it's clear that there's something more to him, the show doesn't really dive much deeper into anything at that point in the story and keeps him more mysterious. And it isn't until the Origins two-parter towards the end of the season that we see that he'd masterminded the heroes getting their own Miraculouses, and that he had a Kwame and Miraculous of his own, and in fact there were many more in his possession. And then finally, in the final episode of Season 1, Volpina, and the first episode of Season 2, The Collector, we finally get to see Fu and know who he is. He's the Guardian of the Miraculous. And this is where he starts to really prepare Marinette to take over for him as the Guardian someday. And through his appearances in different episodes across Season 2, we started to get a lot of answers to some of the show's bigger questions, at least the big questions that we had in those early, innocent days. Questions like, why does Hawkmoth even want both the Miraculouses? What are the Miraculouses in general? What are Kwames? Who were the Order of the Guardians? All that sort of thing. It builds up the extended lore of the story. And Fu was an integral part of that. And on top of that, he starts building up Marinette as his successor, and they develop a bit of a bond there too, with more and more responsibility being transferred to Ladybug, such as the ability to temporarily hand out Miraculouses to side heroes when and if they're needed. And then over the course of the third season, his final season as a key player in the story, Fu opens up about his specific role in the fall of the Order of the Guardians, with him being a young initiate who'd lost control over a sentimonster he'd created to get him food whilst he was standing vigil over the box as a test. So he failed the test. And this sentimonster would go on to rampage and eat all of the other Miraculouses aside from the OG box, as well as eating all of the Guardians and also the entire temple. Hungry fella. And meanwhile, Fu only made it out with the one box, losing the butterfly, the peacock, and the spell book along the way. Oh, and he also has a lost love from the days of the Nazi occupation of France, so we see him get all wistful about that there and even reconnect with her at some point, although she has to go on the run shortly afterwards to protect her from Gabe. Whoops. And so his story's heating up, it's getting all very exciting, we're learning a lot more about him and about the world, and around that time I even started to predict that we were going to see the Guardians make their grand return very soon, and there would be drama between them and Marinette. That period was so hot for theories and speculation, the golden age of that, I tell you what. And then we came to the finale, where he gets caught out by Hawkmoth and Mayura and has to hide in his shell. And eventually, he has no choice but to pass on the guardianship of the Miracle Box to Ladybug and ensure the villains can't do jack shit. And of course, this wipes pretty much all of Fu's memories related to the box away, so his entire life pretty much just gets nuked. That's kind of a brutal fate if you ask me. They don't really go into it too much, but it sounds terrible. He pretty much has to start again at 186 or whatever he is. That sucks, man. And at the time, I was pretty cool with all this. It didn't really bother me all that much. I thought, oh, wow, that's a pretty big twist. And at first, I felt like it did up the stakes quite a lot. Suddenly, Marinette's alone in the world with no support. She's in charge of the fight against Hawkmoth now. She's the leader. She's the one who has to protect all the Miraculouses and the Kwames as the new guardian of the box. She's got a lot going on. And on top of that, she needs to contend with the newly arrived lead guardian, Suhan, who turns up and starts throwing his weight around, questioning all of Master Fu's decisions and Marinette's competency as a guardian. Eventually, she crumbles and confides in Alia, and she gets her groove back. And honestly, I think for much of seasons 1 to 2, Fu was in a very good spot. He was gradually introduced to the story throughout Season 1, and then Season 2 and 3 saw him to begin to build Marinette up as the new guardian of the box. But this is where the character becomes a bit wasted, in all honesty. You have the mentor character, and yes, every lore of superhero media or just any sort of action-adventure type story is eventually going to evolve this mentor biting it and no longer being able to help their charge. That is a classic trope, and we all love it. It's dramatic, it's sad, and at times it's scary because the hero's on their own now. And so of course Miraculous was going to lean into it. It just makes so much sense. And I think it gives Marinette a really good arc. I kind of think they missed out on never having Suhan and Fu have a legit conversation Guardian to Guardian, as well as Fu not being there to settle the dynamic between Suhan and Ladybug, because in Season 4, we see that Suhan tries to take all the Miraculouses away from Marinette and she has to prove herself. And then she beats the villain and does so, and he just drops out of the story. It feels like his personality has to change to make him more submissive after those events. And then every time he comes back and shakes his fist at her, she just yells at him and he goes away again. Fu being there to help out with that would make more sense. I think having the first arc of Season 4 revolve around Suhan being a doubter, with Fu backing up Ladybug, would have been very interesting. And then at the midpoint of the show, or midpoint of the season I guess, that's when you give Fu the boot, as in midway through Season 4. Have Shadow Moth get his ass, and have the guardianship transfer to Ladybug. This time, with Suhan fully on board, as with Fu's help, she proved herself to him. And then, I don't know, have Suhan take Fu's girlfriend away to look after him. After all, he just lost his entire memory. And then you can do the whole Marinette's in way over her head storyline, just like they do in the standard canon. Then you have Ladybug become a guardian, she has a breakdown, with Alia's help she's trying to pick up the pieces, and have a really good run as guardian, but then she crashes and burns when Felix bamboozles her and helps Gabe pretty much steal every Miraculous on the roster. Cat Noir can then help her pick up the pieces and get her mojo back at the start of Season 5, and I feel like it makes their relationship mean more because he's the one that pulled her out of the spiral, out of the breakdown, no one else, whereas she'd already done it before on her own during Season 4 in the regular canon. Well, on her own with Alia. But anyway, I feel like it would be a more well-rounded story that flows better if they had that extra time to flesh out Fu and Marinette's bond and get some closure to his time as a Guardian instead of just cutting the cord. Then midway through that season, you get that shock, and suddenly he's gone, Marinette struggles, she spirals, and eventually it all goes wrong as Felix joins the chat. In the end, I just feel like they turfed Fu way too early in hindsight, and they could have used him a lot more. Hell, probably should have appeared in a few more episodes in previous seasons too. He had more to give to the story, even if just for half a season more. Hindsight and all that. So I would say, yeah, he was a little bit wasted. Not as bad as some other characters, but Master Fu could have been a way more important person in the story. And I just think it's so crazy that they never gave him and Suhan closure. His PTSD and grief and guilt surrounding the death of the Guardians, that's like his big story arc. It's the driving point of his whole character. You'd think they'd want to follow that up, right? Guess not. Poor Master Fu. But that's just some small fry shit when you compare what happened to the actual order of the Guardians over the course of the show's run, because they were well and truly just tossed to the wayside and were completely underused and wasted. For seasons and seasons, there was this massive air of mystery that surrounded the Miraculouses. Where do they come from? Who made them? Etc. We meet Fu and he explains about the Order of the Guardians and how that protected all the different miracle boxes for thousands of years in the mountains of Tibet, I think it was. We slowly hear more about them and Fu's backstory with them, and then in Feast, they get restored, and so you think, ooh, what's gonna happen here? They're back! Are they gonna find Fu and Ladybug and Cat Noir? Are they gonna try to help them defeat Hawkmoth and Mayura? What's the end goal of these characters? Will they be mentors for the heroes? Will they disapprove because they didn't choose them personally? There's so much potential for lots of different stories and character dynamics and lots of potential for drama, and it does start kind of strong for me. You get to meet Suhan early on, and whilst once again, it's a massive missed opportunity and a narrative waste to not have him interact with a Fu that has his memory, it is what it is. But he starts strong. He disapproves of Ladybug and Cat Noir because they're children, and he thinks that since Fu chose them, and chose Ladybug to be the next Guardian, and since Fu is a massive idiot in his opinion, therefore the heroes must be incompetent and don't deserve their spot. But then from then on, he gets rather easily talked down to. He disappears from the narrative for the most part, until Ephemeral, where he appears again, and he demands that Ladybug know Cat Noir's identity, which simply causes a disaster that needs to be reversed with the Snake Miraculous. And then he has to acknowledge that Ladybug is a Guardian like no other, and that he was completely wrong. So pretty much the Guardians turn into obsolete losers instantly, who serve no use other than to sabotage Ladybug with very bad advice. And so I was just shaking my head at this a bit. But that's okay, because there's still time to give this cool, mysterious cosmic order a little bit of interesting roles. A little bit of love. No, he gets scolded again at the start of Season 5 in Multiplication when he's mad at Ladybug for losing all the Miraculouses. Rightly mad, but he gets told, no, shush. And then he says, oh yeah, my bad. I got distracted by the modern world. He's a monk, by the way. They're supposed to be masters of discipline, but okay. And then he leaves to go back to the temple for reinforcements, and that's fine. You know, he's going to come back, he's going to be with a lot of monks, they're going to use Miraculouses, it's going to be cool, right? Wrong! Instead of coming back with the cool army of Guardians using Miraculouses to fight against Monarch's goons, he turns up with Luca, Jagged Stone, and what's her name, having found them and taught them Mira Kung Fu. and I think made them Guardians as well. They're just letting anybody in now. I look at this and I think, how do you take this mysterious cosmic order that had so much potential and promise, and you turn them into this lame joke so easily? Like, they can probably turn it around in the story, but I don't think they're actually going to bother. And it's a shame. It just feels bad, like a massive waste. Oh, and yeah, not really much else to say beyond that. It's like at every turn they decide, nah, screw the Guardians. Let's have another scene of that celestial monk getting chewed out by a pair of teenagers. And also, let's not have them play any sort of important role in the final conflict. It's just lame. Yeah, that's all it is. And so yeah, with all that being said, that's the end really, and these have just been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the Order of the Guardians? Are you with me? Were they completely wasted? Maybe you disagree. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.